Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Guys, we're not that far off from pre-spawn fishing at this point. It's the end of December. We've got a couple of months, depending on where you're at in the country. Pre-spawn fishing is going to start happening soon. And one of the best baits for pre-spawn fishing is a crankbait. And we've seen a very specific trend in the last couple of years regarding these pre-spawn crankbaits, and that's that we're getting smaller in size. We're seeing smaller crankbaits generate a lot of additional strikes. So baits like this Berkeley Clickin' Fritside 5, or maybe a Rapala DT6, maybe a Lure Jensen Speed Trap, all of these baits, which are roughly 2 inches long, are generating a lot of strikes for anglers out there during the pre-spawn. That's great, but one of the problems having to do with all of these cranks is they're kind of difficult to use on a lot of traditional crankbait casting gear. We're finding that, they're small size, they're relatively light. If you've got windy conditions or you want to make long casts, it can be difficult. So I've got for you guys 5 tips that are going to help improve the performance of these baits, which are going to help you generate even more strikes. These are things that a lot of the top pros are using to win tournaments with during the pre-spawn period, but we don't necessarily hear a lot about these tips. So I'm going to share these with you, but before I do, I want to remind you, if you're looking to make some tackle purchases, please use my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link that I put in the video description. It's a great way to support the channel. Every dollar comes right back to creating content so that people out there can hopefully catch a few extra fish. It's very much appreciated, guys. So if you're looking to generate those pre-spawn bites fishing these small crankbaits, it can be a pain in the butt to cast them. They're small little crankbaits and you just can't get the right diving depth, the casting length out of it. But one big tip, and one thing that a lot of the pros are doing anytime they're fishing these small crankbaits, is they're dramatically dropping down in line size. And not only that, they're going to fluorocarbon line, and they're doing it for a couple of reasons. So from a line size perspective, they're fishing these baits on 6 to 10 pound tests. So what that does is it allows you to make longer casts, which also helps get your bait to dive deeper. You throw in the fact that they're fishing fluorocarbon, which sinks, that's going to also increase diving depth. If you fish braid or monofilament, that's going to keep your bait up because both of those want to float. So maybe that's what you're after. If you're only fishing a couple foot of water, you may not be trying to maximize that diving depth, but a lot of times what you're looking to do is get these small baits down into that 4 to 6 foot range, which can be difficult at times, especially if you're not making long casts. So do not be afraid to drop down in line diameter size. Throw these on 6 pound tests. The only thing you have to do is if you're beating your bait up around some rocks or some wood, you got to check your line. You got to make sure you change the knot and retie occasionally. But there's really no difference in doing that in terms of sacrificing the number of bites. I would rather retie 5 extra times throughout the day and catch 5 extra fish. It's not that big of a thing to take on. So that's the first tip. The second tip has to do with using a snap. I generally don't use a snap on a lot of my baits, but with the case of fishing small crankbaits, I do like to use a snap for a couple of reasons. First, the snap adds a little bit of weight. And if you have a little bit of additional weight at the nose, it's going to help get your bait into the diving position to get them to run deeper. With larger crankbaits, you don't necessarily need that. The small snap's not going to add enough weight to change the floating position, but you will see that a snap can alter the resting position of a crankbait in the water for a small crankbait. The other thing the snap's going to do is improve the wiggling motion out of your bait. It's going to add movement or allow your bait to have more movement. And what we find with these small crankbaits is if you are throwing heavier pound tests, you do limit the movement to your bait. So we're trying to find anything that you can do to get the bait to run the way it wants to run. We don't want to limit movement. We want to allow it to have additional movement. And using a snap can be a great way to do that with your small running crankbaits. Next up, and you can see if I compare the 3 crankbaits I talked about, these are all 2-inch baits, but they've all got really different sized hooks. They're all roughly, I'm going to say, size sixes to size fives. And the thing here is they're different from a diameter standpoint, they're different from a length. The thing here is you can add a lot of additional weight to a small crankbait without actually changing the size of your hooks by using a different brand's hooks. Meaning, in the case of the Speed Trap versus the Click and Fritzside 5, these are both size sixes, but they're different size sixes. So one's going to weigh different than the other. So if you want to improve some diving depth, you can go with slightly heavier hooks, not necessarily bigger hooks, but heavier hooks. Um, it's something that I think people don't recognize enough with any hard baits. Anytime you get a hard bait, you can dramatically change the action of that bait by swapping out treble hooks. You may go from a size 4 owner hook to a size 4 gamakatsu hook, and it's going to add a lot of difference on a bait. You can change, float rates and sink rates. It really does come into effect. But when you're talking about small crankbaits like this, it really comes into an effect even more because you don't need as much weight to make a bigger difference. So don't be afraid though to play around with hooks on this, on the baits that you get and change out those stock hooks. It really can make a difference. So the next one has to do with making contact with the bait. We always talk about wanting to create deflections, to create reactionary strikes, but I find with these small crankbaits, it's even more important to make sure you're creating bottom contact. If you're talking about the pre-spawn period, most fish are going to be tight to the bottom. They're going to be trying to absorb warmth coming off of rocks or stumps. So you want to get your bait down to them, which means you're going to be deflecting off those objects. And the more objects you deflect off of, the more you're going to create reaction strikes, especially from cold pre-spawn lethargic fish. So any deflection you can make is a potential reactionary strike point. It's just an important thing to do, and I think more so even with these small crankbaits, because a lot of times the reaction strike comes into play when you can sneak up on a fish, and these small crankbaits are a lot better at sneaking up on a fish than a bigger, noisier crankbait. The fifth tip for you might mean you got to put your pride behind you a little bit, but a lot of people are finding very good success by fishing these small crankbaits on spinning gear. They're putting away their bait casting gear and they're either going to uh, bait finesse systems, so that's still bait casting gear, but it's made specifically for light baits, or they're going straight to spinning gear. The reason they're doing that is those systems are made to handle lighter line better, which is increasing casting distance and increasing the diving depths that you're going to get out of the baits because you're increasing that. They're just made to fish smaller baits, and therefore they make it easier to fish these small baits, which can be a little bit of a pain in the butt at times, especially on windy days. So there are times you may want to pull out the spinning gear, even though it's a crankbait. It really does make a big difference. So hopefully these 5 tips will help prepare you for some good pre-spawn fishing that we're going to be seeing here in the not too distant future. If you've got any additional tips and tricks for fishing small crankbaits, please put it in the comment section so that the rest of us can learn from you. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned. We'll have a new one coming out tomorrow for you.